We have today a special edition of XPRIMM Time for Business in the context of the visit of a delegation from Kyrgyzstan that wants to learn more about the Romanian netcat program and its functioning. So, we're speaking today with Mr. ALTON, who is Financial Sector Specialist, World Bank. Welcome to Romania.
Thank you very much.
We're glad to have you here for this discussion about a very important subject, not only for Romania, but for the entire world as well. So how are the netcat insurance schemes developing throughout the world?
It's a complicated question because I think it's very different in different countries. We had a presentation today where we showcased a few examples from around the world. And what we see is that if you look at, for example, penetration rates, they vary hugely between different countries, right? So you have a scheme like in France, which doesn't have huge catastrophe risk, but it has some, where penetration is almost 100%. And then you have schemes, even in developed countries such as California, where penetration is quite low. And there's different technical reasons for that. It has to do with the price of the premium, the size of deductibles, etc. But it varies a lot, is the right answer.
But as a general impression, would you say that people are now paying more attention to netcat than they used to?
Probably, I think especially given the recent hurricane seasons we saw in the United States and the Caribbean last year, and the discussion on climate change and the fact that everyone expects, especially hydrometrics, to increase over the next few decades, really. I think the discussion has picked up a lot, and it's something where a lot of people are putting a lot of thought in and working on, such as in the Kyrgyzstan Republic, which is why we're here.
Regarding Europe, the climate change is the main focus for this concentration on netcat risks? Is this the main problem, considered the main problem for Europe?
I'm not sure if it's, I think it's considered, climate change is considered a main problem in general and politically, right? And Europe, I can't speak on Europe's behalf, but I'm a European citizen, I happen to be a European citizen, and I understand that it is a big discussion in Europe. I'm not sure if it's driving the discussion on insurance so much in Europe, because from what I understand, it's particularly something that's going to affect developing countries and emerging countries, right? Especially those which are going to see increase in drought and other hydrological risks over the coming years. But it's something that's globally an issue, of course.
Well, you've heard today a few things about the Romanian insurance program. So how would you characterize the Romanian mandatory insurance system compared to countries that seem to have the same insurance needs?
It's relative, right? So I think if you compare, for example, the Romanian program to the current program in the Kyrgyzstan Republic, I think it's fair to say that the Romanian program is further down the road in terms of becoming an effective insurance program for catastrophes. But there are still issues, and the World Bank is providing assistance to work on those. But it's definitely a good example for countries such as the Kyrgyzstan Republic to learn from.
What is actually the situation in the Kyrgyzstan Republic right now?
The concrete situation and kind of the motivation behind this trip is, to some extent, is that they're currently working on a law which will reform the current program. They have identified a few issues, and the World Bank is working together with the authorities in the Kyrgyzstan Republic to really nail down on the key issues which have to be reformed. And I'm not going to go into the details here, but basically there's a law under development in Parliament, and we brought some parliamentarians here to hear firsthand from different experiences. We're also going to go to Turkey afterwards to hear about the cat pool there. So this is really the motivation for the current trip.
How old is the current program that they have in the Kyrgyzstan Republic?
It was instituted first in 2015, if I'm not mistaken.
Not too old.
No, it's very young. Yeah.
Okay, and the penetration rate, what is it in the Kyrgyzstan Republic?
It's low. I don't have the exact number at my fingertips, but it's still fairly low. There's a twist there, though, because there are some segments of the population which basically get coverage for free as a kind of form of subsidy for social purposes. So we have seen these type of policies naturally increase a lot in the last few years, but they obviously don't contribute to the sustainability of the program. So overall numbers penetration isn't very high yet, but the figures of those policies which don't allow the state insurance organization to collect premiums, they're shooting up quite quickly.
Okay, so they have some issues regarding this program. We have our own, as we know. What seem to be the similar problems for these netcat programs throughout the world? I mean, for the Kyrgyz Republic and for Romania, the penetration rate is a problem. The relation between the authorities and the private companies is maybe an issue. What seem to be similar problems throughout the world for these programs?
I mean, to keep it very general, I think one issue is to really get people to buy natural cat insurance, even in cases where it's mandatory, right? So I think that's actually something that was pointed out today in Romania. We have a mandatory scheme, but still penetration is fairly low, and it has to do with the enforcement of the law, right? So it's difficult to institute mandatory schemes and then enforce the law. In cases where it's not mandatory and there's not a lot I can think of, the problem is to make the policies attractive enough for people to buy anyways. So I think penetration really is a big issue. Then just making sure that the solvency is guaranteed of the program, even in cases where you have big disaster impacts, is a problem. And we've seen from some very developed countries that after big earthquakes, for example in New Zealand, the program they had there had to rely on aid from the state.
How do you see the development of these programs, the netcat programs throughout the world, also generally speaking? What is the tendency, the direction they go through?
I'm not sure if I can give you like a specific tendencies in terms of the way they're structured, but I think there's a tendency and interest by governments to institute such programs and to work on them across the world.
Thank you very much, especially for being with us today and for sharing this information. We'll hope to have the chance to speak again soon, and maybe we can be proud of our national program for netcat and tell you more about it.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having us. It's been a pleasure, and we appreciate your hospitality. And I'll be back in Romania, I hope, pretty soon.
Thank you.